Let's see. That's my family right there. And I am so grateful for them. That's my wife Gloria, who Zach was talking about. She assists the General Superintendent of the Wesleyan Church, Dr. Wayne Smith. And I just love my family. I just had to throw that in there. I'm just grateful, man. We were both raised in the church, my wife and I. I was raised, actually, let me shut this music off. Hold on. Look at that, he was right, the music keeps going. We were raised in the Spanish church. I'm Puerto Rican. And we were raised in the type of church where worship lasted for 2 hours. Yeah. And so what some of you call praise breaks, our praise breaks were in the Latin style, with cowbells, tambourines, and actually the members of the church would bring their cowbells and the tambourines and they would play along. And it was the type of church where the worship leader would start singing and I had to follow. That's how I developed my ear as a musician. And so I'm able to hear and then, what key they're in, and then just follow them. And so I'm really grateful for those years growing up in the church as a young musician. And as I started to grow, I've had the opportunity to just tour and really assist the church and record and, work with different artists. And the only reason why I'm showing you this is not to show off. It's really to get to this point right here. Really quick, and you'll see it now. This was actually last year in Guatemala. Beautiful concert with thousands of people worshiping God. Is that picture right there? That's me when I was about 13 years old playing in the church. And what I want to say about that is that if it wasn't for the church, yes, I wouldn't have had this opportunity to really step into my calling and passion. And so I just want to challenge you guys, and that's my first question to you guys is, who are you discipling in your worship context? Who's the next student, the next generation that you're pouring into? Because it was those years that allowed me to move on into my calling and purpose, and I'm really grateful. So the church, it's definitely the hope of the world, and the impact of discipleship is everlasting. And ultimately, I'm just so passionate, and I believe with my whole heart that music and a true moment of worship in the presence of God has the power to break down any barriers. It's has the power. Oh wow. Has the power to break down any barriers. It's one of the primary ways to unite God's people, and it has the power to soften the hearts. It has the power to bring about healing, reconciliation, diversity, and draw people to God. And that should be our goal as the church, is to help people know God. So, friends, we are actually living in times where anxiety, 300 million people around the world have depression, according to the World Health Organization. The world is ever changing, and though the United States continues to grow in diversity, it's unfortunate that our churches have not. Sunday mornings over the years still remain mostly separated and segregated to the comfort of their own ethnic groups. So everything seems hopeless, but there's hope. Jesus is the hope of the world, and our purpose is to help people find Jesus. And today I want to talk to you about how do we break these barriers through worship. And I've never been more convinced in my life that if there's anything that has the power to overcome the challenges of our world today, is music, it's worship. King Saul was one of the most distressed kings. He was an angry leader, anxious, depressed. He was always upset at something. He took himself out of the hands of God. He was mean, always lashed out at people. That sounds like our world today, right? Everyone's always fast-paced, mean. If you're stuck in traffic, somebody's getting the middle finger. And so that's the reality of our world. The only thing that could calm him down was music. When King Saul was at his all-time low, he called for a musician. And he called for David. And David was not just any type of musician. He was an anointed musician that God has separated for that specific time. And the reality is that there's a spiritual component in music that heals, that restores, that brings people together at a level that transcends boundaries, culture, language, religion, gender, age, color, and politics. Music is a spiritual place where we can all experience the supernatural hope and confidence. Music unites. We actually move beyond all of our labels that the world tries to put on us, and we actually come together. And so how can music be this powerful? Well, music resonates not just with the beat that you hear, but music, especially worship music, resonates with God's heart. Worship music unto God resonates with Him. And so what does this mean for us as the church? Like, how do we apply this? How do we actually go to the next level in our worship context and help people connect to Christ? And so this means a whole lot. If the church is the hope of the world, we have an assignment, and our assignment is to connect people to Jesus, like I said. And so we have to make it a priority and be intentional. And if I'm talking fast, I'm sorry, I can slow down, but I'm just passionate about this. We have to be intentional on making sure that our hearts, that the excellence of the presentation of our worship unto God is being done at the highest level possible and in the most sincere way possible. We have a responsibility as the church to reach this generation and develop and equip the future leaders. We as the church, we must demonstrate unity and diversity in such a divided world. And we need to understand that authentic worship is one of those things that brings hope and inspires people. And so Jesus commissioned us. He said, well, go to all the world, make disciples. He has a heart for all people. And worship music is at the forefront of that assignment that God has called us to do. And so if we want to see people break free from bondage, and we want to see a unified world, it starts with the church. And Jesus through the church is the only hope. Jesus through the church is the only hope. So Jesus through us is the only hope the world has. And so I'm really excited to be here. We have a serious responsibility, and I want to just give you 3 points that I think we must apply if the church is going to stay alive, if we're going to reach this generation. And so you could write these down. And the first one is this. We have to be intentional, and we have to embrace God's heart and vision, not our own agenda. So it's been very expressed, very specifically what God requires from us. God told us, love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor. And so that's God's heart. This should be our main priority as leaders. We need to live this out. So what does this have to do with worship or with excellence in our churches? Well, the reality is that if we love God with all of our heart and we love our neighbors, we are now operating from a place from authenticity. And authenticity is a characteristic that our world is hungry for. So it's our responsibility to truly embrace God's heart and vision, not our own agenda. And that's hard to do in this world, because everything, social media is all about me. And so I think one of the first things we need to do is God, what have you called us to do as the church, and how do we, if you've called us to go reach people all over the world, how do we apply that? And in a worship context that's very, very important. Music plays a big part in uniting people. And so I think one of the ways to continually continually embrace God's heart is we have to be in a relationship with Him. We have to allow God, if you guys are worship leaders in your context, we have to constantly be in a relationship with God and allow Him to crush us and develop us. And the reality is that life is a journey of ups and downs, but the more we are embracing God's heart and not our own preference, the more we're going to experience His presence, His Spirit in our lives and in the churches. And that's our responsibility as the leaders of the church and as the worship leaders. We have to constantly be in that relationship with Christ. And that's what it means to pursue His vision and His heart. And so the second thing we have to do is pursue excellence. It's important that we are purposeful and prepared so that we can create room for the Holy Spirit to move. Can you imagine our churches operating in a level of excellence that removes all of the distractions from people experiencing God? And as I said, I think of King Saul in the Bible, who was so tormented that he would call on David just to feel a sense of relief. And friends, that's our world today. People are walking in our churches with so much baggage. And the reality is that, it's important for our churches to be intentional on pursuing excellence, to avoid distractions. And today I want to give you just a couple things how you can pursue excellence in your church context. And we're going to have time for discussion and questions here later. And so, one second here. Sorry about that. pursue excellence. One thing I want to say is that when people begin to sing and declare how good God is and how powerful He is, they suddenly realize how small their challenges are. You guys believe that? And so in a world that's so divided, we have to be intentional on taking people on a journey. From the moment they walk in through those doors. In fact, it starts in the parking lot. That whole experience, we have to make sure that we're pursuing excellence, that we're not just cutting corners. Every little detail matters, to be honest. Every little, like even something like this matters. And right now we're just in this setting. But the reality is that, we shouldn't have church with these cables out like that. You know what I mean? That's what it means to pursue excellence. Yeah. And so a couple ways that you guys could pursue excellence, I think I got it here. It's personal practice. That means if you're a musician, if you're a worship leader, sometimes we could get caught up in just the routine that we forget to practice ourselves. I know that happens to me. I know sometimes I'm so caught up with the task that I don't have time to really sit down and practice my craft. And so excellence takes hard work, and it means we are continually getting better, learning and growing spiritually and in our craft. If you aren't putting in the practices it takes to be better, you're pretty much staying stale. So we have to find that place of passion, go back to the basics, and remember and reflect on how God has called us for the work of the Lord. The second thing is we have to set a goal. We can't be content with staying where we are. And that's a problem that a lot of our churches are facing. We're just kind of settling and just staying the same. But the reality is that we need to set a goal. God wants us to do our best. And the bottom line is that our best will constantly be changing with more time, work, and experience. Who watches basketball here? Anybody? I love basketball, and I love Kevin Durant is one of my favorite players. And check out this quote that he said. He said, "I'm busy working on every aspect of my game. Defense, shooting, rebounding, but I really want to become a better overall team player. Help my teammates become better players on the court in order to win more ball games." See, the mindset of a true champion is always looking to improve. And the mindset of a champion is always looking to make their team better. And so it's important that we set that standard, which is my third point, is we have to set an expectation. And excellence starts with that expectation we set for ourselves. So in a team context can only be created by the expectation of our leadership. So it is really up to us. So I'm talking about pursuing excellence in our worship context here. And I'm just saying that the standard starts with us. If we want to see the people coming in prepared, how many of you guys have worship teams, like people, musicians, and people on your team? And the rest of you guys just lead worship? Tell me more about this group really quick. Who leads worship in their churches? Worship. Awesome. What do you guys do?
Depending on the size of the church. If the church is small, you may have to do everything. So that's what it depends on.
And let me tell you, if you set that standard of excellence, excellence draws excellence. Excellence draws excellence. And it doesn't matter if you're by yourself. I know there's a lot of limited resources and people in many of our churches and financial resources, but the reality is that, man, when we pursue it with excellence, man, you're going to see God. First of all, you're being faithful to God. Second of all, you're going to see people drawn to that excellence. The other thing we have to do is, number 4, is look at things with fresh eyes. If we want to be a church of innovation and initiate new things, we can't do this by staying the same. In a new season, we need to look at what we do with fresh eyes. Different seasons call for new strategies or playing techniques. And sure, I strongly believe, I was just talking to Zach about this, we have to honor our traditions and honor the things that have been built before us. And we need to keep that alive, and I think there's ways to keep that alive. However, if we're going to reach this generation, we need to look at things with fresh eyes, and that's the reality. And there's a whole generation out there lost that we need to go after. And so Worship is one of the ways we're going to bring these people in, and it's important that we always approach it. So the last thing I want to say about this is that it's not about the lights. It's not about the bells and whistles. It's ultimately about the heart. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth. And that is what you call pursuing excellence. We want to worship God in spirit and in truth. Next thing I want to share with you guys is, actually, did this thing leave again? Sorry. I want you guys to take a look at this. This is my good friend. Christian Purpose. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, guys. That was live TV, national TV, on The Voice. His name is Christian Cuevas, a good friend of mine. And pretty much what you experienced there on national TV was a glimpse of heaven, in my opinion. It was America being led in worship. In Spanish, young people I mean, people in mainstream world in the pop world, Alicia Keys singing, feeling the presence of God there. And that brings me to my third point. If the church is going to stay alive, and if we're going to reach people, and the power of worship, you just experienced the power. That's just through these speakers right here. I mean, wasn't that powerful? Just imagine. I mean, he was actually one of the top finalists that season for American Idol. I don't know if you guys got to see him. Sorry, The Voice. Sorry, on The Voice. And what you guys experienced was this, number 3, and this is my point, is that we have to embody the sound of heaven in our churches. We have to embody the sound of heaven. Let me put this up here. Embody the sound of heaven. In fact, I'll put this up. See this right here? This is an article that the Time magazine released not too long ago. And what you're seeing there is a computerized image of the future American. And by the year 2020, this is what the future American will look like. And what they're implying is that our world is coming together. There's more biracial couples getting married. That's our future. In the year 2020. So what does that mean? Is that our churches need to be intentional on establishing an experience for people that it doesn't matter if you're a biracial couple, you could come into the church and feel something beautiful. You don't have to feel like, oh, well, that's not my style. So the church must cater to, if the church is going to stay alive, the church must be intentional on designing an experience that's going to embody the sound of heaven. And the sound of heaven is that. It's everyone worshiping together. Actually, have you ever wondered what heaven will be like when we go there and how worship will be like? I mean, sometimes I imagine that, okay, so God, does this mean that Charles Wesley is going to, you're going to call him up and sing all your beautiful hymns? Or, the Brooklyn Tabernacle, or Fred Hammond, or I don't know, some gospel artist, now you worship me. Or actually, no, Chris Tomlin, I want to hear you and your acoustic guitar. I mean, that's not the way heaven is going to be like. Heaven is going to be one body, one sound, everyone worshiping the name of Jesus. That's in chapter 7 of Revelation. And really what John is describing there is a vision of every tribe and every tongue worshiping together as one. That's a prophecy that we're all going to be there worshiping God. And our churches must be intentional on embodying that sound of heaven. So I know many times here on earth, our churches have failed to live this out. We're so divided. The church is so divided, and we create our own like little groups. The other thing I wanted to show you, and I thought this was really cool. Who's seen the Greatest Showman here before? Isn't that such a great movie? Amazing movie. And I want to show you this clip. I don't know. Do I have enough time? What time is it?
Yes.
Which one?
3:19.
3:19. Well, check this out. I want to show you this clip because this clip really. Check out this clip. This was a powerful moment. Sorry about that. If you haven't seen the movie.
To get The Greatest Showman greenlit, we had to get everyone into New York City to hear a read-through, where we'd read through the script and sing it. We needed the Fox executives, we needed Hugh, we needed the producers, and it took 8 months to get everyone in the room. And once we managed to get this date, Hugh calls me the day before and says
that I had just had a skin cancer cut out of my nose. All was fine. I knew you were worried about that. But I had 80 stitches in my nose, and my doctor said, you're not allowed to sing.
I said, Hugh, who have you told? Because you cannot tell anyone, because no one is flying to New York City to hear you not sing a musical.
Which was a good advice. So the next day, everyone arrives, and I get there, and I explained to everyone why I wasn't singing. I also explained, this was Michael's suggestion, a good one, that I should stand just to be clear to everyone that I will be singing on the day, and gesticulate, and of course act all the scenes.
And he did. Yeah. Also, to Hugh's credit, he did that for every single number. He stood up there. He was the great showman until one number.
This is an authentic moment in a session. Look at how powerful music is.
not be blinded by the lights. From now on, what's waiting till tomorrow starts tonight? Starts tonight. Let this promise in me start like an anthem in my heart. From now on,
You wasn't supposed to sing, but
from
Get it
now
out.
on. Praise my name. Oh, someone else's dream. You are the man I became. For years and years, I chased their cheers. Brings me to always needing more. But when I stop and see you here, oh, I remember who I am.
That's so amazing. And I know it's a movie, but what this movie is displaying and what these songs displayed, if you guys, for those of you who've seen the movie, it's displaying purpose, it's displaying meaning, it's displaying family, diversity. Did you guys see the diversity and the unity in that room? And why can't the church be like that? And so, this is all good in theory, but how do we apply this, right? What are some ways we can do this? And I just want to give you 2 practical ways to embody the sound of heaven. And number 1 is this. Sounds really cliche, but it starts with this. It's all about Jesus. Jesus is the foundation in which our worship must be built on. It's not about the musical style. We believe music is a universal language, correct? Just as long as everyone lives in our universe. However, when we establish our worship services to be biblically based, it will trump and diffuse musical style preferences. The reality is that only Jesus can change the heart of the people. So songs that declare the greatness of God, songs that declare who He is, those are the ones that are going to transcend. Songs that declare what He has done for us are the ones that people are going to resonate with. So it starts with us embodying the sound of heaven. And so Jesus is the unifier. We must be united around Jesus. Very cliche, but very important. And the reality is that too many worship songs these days, they're all about me. All about me. And so the songs that we sing in our churches, they need to declare the greatness of Jesus, because when we can put our focus on Him, then the people who are walking in there with so much baggage and so much, all these challenges, they're going to realize, man, God is bigger than my problems. And yeah, it's real, but a moment in the presence of God changes everything. And that's the power of worship. That's why I'm so excited about music. Music is so amazing. And if God has given us that gift of music, and we've been entrusted with something so beautiful. So make it all about Jesus. Sounds cliche. And yeah, there's some technical musical aspects to it. You could throw in some chords. You could throw in some, a beat and a rhythm. That's all part of the process. But the reality is that to have a unified body in Christ, it needs to be about Jesus. The second way is you have to lead the way. The leader is the one that sets this tone. Nobody else is going to set it. And, and honestly, it starts actually with the senior pastor too, first and foremost. But if you've been entrusted with the leadership of worship in your church context, you have to be intentional, and it's relationally. In order to embody the sound of heaven, you have to connect with all people. You need to be a diverse person. You need to have a heart and vision for it. That's why my first point was embrace God's heart and vision. It needs to be a part of who you are. It needs to be in you. So how do you establish these characteristics if you just grew up in your own style and your own, how do you do that? And I think it just starts relationally. It starts with you getting around people that don't look like you, don't think like you, don't sing like you, it's okay to step out of your comfort zone and connect with different genres and styles of music. So you have to be intentional about that. I think, especially in a team context, the ultimate goal is to have a team around you of people with the same heart and passion. However, you need to embrace the different approaches and styles that people bring. That's the only way you're going to, like I said, like my example of what heaven is going to be like. So if heaven were to be like, Charles Wesley, go ahead and, I love hymns. That's not my thing. So that means I'm going to sit down and not worship with Charles. Like, the reality is that we're all going to worship God together. So here on earth, as the leaders of worship, we have to embrace the different cultures, the different styles. And there's ways to do that. Let me tell you. You say, oh, well, it's just that I don't listen. There's ways to do that. There's music stores right around the corner that you could go. There's always musicians in there jamming out. That's how I've met so many musicians in a music store. They sit down on the piano. Bro, where you play at? There's this. Hey, can you come? Let's hang out. Let's connect. And let me tell you, people want to connect with people. Yeah. People, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter stylistically what they look like. How people want to have that connection with people. We have to be the bridge, and we have to let our lives. We have to live that out. We have to live that out. So, I think I'm gonna just end it here. To be honest, I'll close with this, and then we could do questions. I think it's important. When you design a service, and I don't know if that's the language, design a service, but as you prepare your hearts to lead people in worship, anytime you could think about the 16-year-old student, have that in mind, and then you think about, okay, well, we have this older generation, right, who we want to honor, and we want to love them. And if we think with all these people in our hearts and in our mind, it will feel genuine. God has called us to love all these people. And we will be serving the people God has called us to reach. we will see people have a transforming relationship with Jesus. And so 3 things again: embrace God's heart and vision, pursue excellence, and embody the sound of heaven. And I promise you, we're going to see a whole different dynamic in our worship experiences in churches. Thank you. Any questions?
You're always told as a non-musician pastor, a non-singing pastor, let me put that out there, because singing is not my calling.
Listen, we're the same. I don't sing a note.
My voice is beautiful to me and God in the shower. That's what I believe. There you go. But I've always been told that musicians are peculiar people, and there has to be a certain touch that you have to have in dealing with musicians. And I bring that up because I have a wonderful music ministry, but I'm noticing that excellence is not the priority. Mm-hmm. For example, our services start at 10 o'clock. Praise and worship is supposed to happen from 10 to 10:15. I'm usually at the podium 10:10, 10:15. Praise and worship starts when I come out. No. And so it's, you know, it's that, and then my choir members are still coming in when I'm coming in. And so it's that level of unseriousness or lack of seriousness. So I don't make up a word. A lack of seriousness that is really eating me to my core. Because worship sets the atmosphere. And so not normally, but times I'm bringing up the worship atmosphere from a non-singer, non-musician point of view, because the people who have those gifts are out of order. Does that make sense? So what would be your advice to me as I deal with my minister of music, my choir director, and their members?
To us.
That's what I was going to say first, is that you're not the only one with that problem. So that's a common problem in the church. And I think it's just a culture issue, you know? I think it's a culture issue, and it's really hard to navigate. However, I think that I think it's important that, again, you set the standard as a leader, and you know, sometimes musicians need to be disciplined. They need to be, and I'm guilty of this, because sometimes as the musician, you know, you think you can get away with it, right? Because, well, they need me. They can't do church without me. But the reality is, let me tell you, you know, we just need Jesus. That's it. We just need the presence of God to come, and wherever 2 or 3 are gathered. And yeah, you know, I'm a musician. Excellence is part of who I am. I love to approach things with excellence. But in this case, I would challenge my musicians. I would challenge them. First of all, I would give them vision on why it is that you do what you do and the meaning of it, and give them perspective. Hey, do you understand that people are walking in through these doors ready to commit suicide today? And they're carrying baggage. And do you understand the assignment that we have as the musicians, as the people who create that atmosphere so they can have a connection with Jesus? Do you understand how important it is what we do? And that's why we need to start on time, and that's why we need to learn our music. That's why we need to, you know, whatever it is that you require from them, you need to give them that vision. And whoever doesn't have that heart, to be honest, they gotta go. If that heart, if there's not that unity in heart, and they're thinking that it's all about them, then there's a heart issue there. Yeah. And that's the root of it. The root of it is the heart. And so part of it is, so we're called to disciple people, right? So put them on a plan. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna give you two months, or whatever it is. You know, disciple them through that, because I think that's our responsibility as a minister. Is okay. How do we help? You know, because you know, us musicians, us singers, we have our things too. You know, we have, and so. But I would definitely start with vision. If they can't buy into it with like that, and most artists, most musicians, we're soft, we're emotional people, you know, and so I would definitely put them. Just cast that vision so they understand why it is what we do and why it's important. And you have to set that level of excellence. If not, it will continue. And sometimes that means, yeah. Any other questions? That's a good question. Hopefully that answered it.
So this kind of speaks a little bit to that. A lot of churches that I know, they use the band in the AV booth as their mission field. That's where we'll put the unbeliever. Or really, it's we don't want to do it. They know how to do it. We'll let them do it. To what extent would you say that is a good tool of evangelism and discipleship? And to what extent did that just then ruin the culture of what's going on in your experience? Because I mean, Babylon Bee picks on this a lot, right? Like I played the whole Led Zeppelin guitar solo, and no one knows the difference, right? Like, where do you see that intersection in this?
Yeah, I think, man, that's a good question, because I've seen guys, I think of one guy in particular, guitar player, amazing, can shred like crazy. He's a full-time musician. He depends on music. He needs to do his gigs. But there was an opportunity for him to come be a part of a service one day, and this was like about maybe 16 years ago, and he went just thinking it was a gig. I'm just gonna go play my 3 songs as a gig. But what he didn't know is that the presence of God was gonna meet him there, and his life was gonna be transformed. And now, 15, 16 years later, this guy, I mean, if there's anyone, and even compared to musicians who grew up in the church, when you talk about someone worshiping authentically and with a pure heart, is this guy right here, playing the guitar every Sunday, just worshiping God, and it's just so beautiful. So I've seen that. However, the reality is that there's a balance to that too, because you can't just show up all stoned up to service and all high, let's rock it out for Jesus. No, there has to be some things that. And so I would say, man, you have to pray about it. I think that's the whole discipleship thing. Is people are on a journey, and so as whoever's leading that ministry, really their responsibility is to disciple these people. So if you're seeing growth, if you're seeing spiritual growth happen in their life, and not that they're perfect, because nobody is, but if you're seeing, man, I'm walking with these people and I'm seeing that they're trying. I'm seeing that they're making improvements, then that's something to value. Now, if you see complete, if you see a hard heart and you don't see progress, then the reality is that if it's disrupting your culture, don't have it. So, any other questions? Those are good questions, really good questions.
I have another one.
Yeah.
So the whole pursuit of excellence, that kind of rubs my grace thing a little bit the wrong way. Obviously, you want to put out a great product, but I've seen that go the other way, where people become you fight the perfectionism, and I've seen it go the wrong way more often than I've seen it go the right way. So where's that tension of you talked earlier about authenticity? Well, in some churches, they have no resources to bring in excellence. And so authenticity for some churches is to play a music video. I don't think that's a good thing, but that's where they're at. And so being authentic where they're at, and yet giving enough grace for that, because some people just get so intimidated, right? Like, I'm not that good, so I'm not going to step up and do it. When they can maybe play 3 chords. So where do you see that sort of intersection of those things?
Yeah, I think when I say pursue excellence, it's definitely not all the bells and whistles like what a lot of our churches are displaying. Not that that's bad, I think pursuing excellence is a hard thing again as well, and it's just really being faithful with what God has given you. It's saying, okay, we don't have all these resources, and we don't have the people, we don't have the financial resources, but how can I pursue this with excellence? Again, and my small example of this is, if we were having church here today, this is not excellence. Okay. And the reality is that a lot of times we let this slide. This is a small example, but the reality is that we let this little thing, it's just a cable, leave it there. No, excellence is saying, you know what? Man, we have people coming here for the first time today. Just like if somebody was to walk into your house, if you have a guest coming to your house, let me tell you, you start throwing everything in the closet. Quick. Start cleaning, you throw the dishes wherever. Just so when you open the door, hey, how are you? I wasn't expecting you. You know what I mean? And it's sad that the church sometimes, we just kind of like, we just settle, you know, it's okay, we can leave that on the floor. No, we have to, and as far as the music context, we have to look at all those details. God is in the details. God is in the details. We have to look at all those details. And even practically, even like our sound. Okay, so how do we, to be honest, I'm not even content because I didn't have enough time to set up. I didn't like the way these slides were happening today because, you know, there's a certain way I want to see them, and not because of perfection, but because I want it to be excellent. Because number one, I'm talking about God. I'm talking about who He is. And we have to just pursue. So it's being faithful with those little things that God has entrusted us with. And being authentic is key too, because being authentic to your context is really important. Not trying to pull off something that you can't. But I also will say pursuing excellence is, like I said, and my point is looking at things with fresh eyes. Because if you're going to stay doing the same thing for years and years, let's just put the video. Like, how do we actually, okay, we want to have a music team. So how do we position ourselves for that? That's pursuing excellence, is creating that environment so you can, you know, progress. Anything else?
So in that vein of pursuing excellence, like with the team, do you have specific tools that you found really helpful in doing that, in building the team?
Yeah, so there's tons of resources out there that have been created, and I'm personally myself, I'm designing a couple resources myself to equip smaller churches, because I've worked in big churches, and I know one of the resource, the lack of resources is not only financially but people, right? We don't have the musician who can actually play and set the atmosphere. But there's so many cool resources out there, and I would love to share some of them with you. Little things you can do, even if it's just you leading worship alone, that can change the whole dynamic of your worship experience. Mm-hmm. And one of them is leveraging technology. You know, there's tracks and little things you can do that change the game. And so we could talk offline more in detail. I could give you a couple resources for that. But yes, there's always pursuing excellence. There's always something that you can do to make it better. Always. Any other questions?
I can go on forever, but
do we have enough time? Are we good with time? What time are we supposed to?
So one's a landmine, and the other one is more serious. The landmine one is there's smaller congregations. Some congregations are of the mind that you shouldn't pay your musicians because it's a volunteer gift that they're giving, whereas musicians would probably like to be paid. I assume so. And so, like, even in bigger churches, right? Like, you'll have a paid worship leader but volunteer band, you know, and then some. And so that's something to navigate, right? That's more of the technique. But the other one, speaking to this class, which is more appropriate, the Holy Spirit moves you to do something other than the set list, which means it's not going to be polished, but it can be more powerful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any sort of, I mean, not that you ever want to, you know, put a method to the Holy Spirit, but is there any sort of guideline that you have for when the Spirit moves in those moments versus the set list versus where the Spirit's calling?
Yeah, well, I mean, if the Spirit is moving, you got to follow the Spirit, I think, first and foremost. But I think there, you know, some people, I don't want to say abuse, but kind of abuse of that, especially certain worship leaders. Well, the Spirit led me, and now they're going in, singing all their medleys and all their songs and doing all their riffs. It was just the Spirit, you know what I mean? So it could become a performance, you know, and less about the Spirit. And so I would say, you know, what is the goal of the service? Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Because at the end of the day, we're here to accomplish, no matter worship team, children's ministry, pastor, we're all on the same team. And we're here to accomplish the same thing. So we can't, as worship leaders, I don't think we can just go off in our own little thing and just think, well, the Spirit is moving, and you know, I just have to do what God told me to do, because then now we're off mission with the vision of the house, and I think that's wrong too. So I would say, yeah, for sure, there's going to be times where you got to repeat a chorus, and it depends on your context. You can repeat the song, and you know, let's sing this one more time, let's sing it, or whatever it is. I think, you know, as long as it's authentic and it's coming from the heart, and you know, it's not distracting, then yeah, there's a time to move in the Spirit, as long as it fits within the vision, mission of the church too. Because if not, then the reality is go open up your own church and just sing all day and let people go to your own church and sing all day. You know what I mean? If that's what you want to do. So.
I just wanted to comment. I'm in a larger church, and we have a paid worship leader for our modern service, and the rest are volunteers. But what we've tried to do is to provide a couple of special things for our volunteers throughout the year. It's one night, even one night when they're having rehearsal, when they walk in, we've ordered pizzas and stuff, so when they walk in, there's pizza for them. And just do some little things to just say, we appreciate what you're doing throughout the year. Sometimes it's a gift card to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or something, but it's just saying to them that we value them.
That's awesome, yeah.
Those are just small. There's still big things in a budget, in some budgets, but there are still ways you can show people that you appreciate.
That's great insight. If anybody else has something to add to that, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's important.
Mine isn't a question, it's a comment. We had a paid, excellent musician, moderate-sized church, and she left because the church couldn't follow the vision of the pastor, which is along the lines of what you're saying about worship, his vision for worship. And she was on board with his vision for worship, but the church wasn't on board for it. And how do you combat that? And the best example I can give is, we're CME, moderate, probably average age 60 above, and not that he was trying to bring in the lights and all of that, but he tried to keep the hymns, he tried to keep the variety so that we could appease and provide for everybody. And our musician left, because the church just wouldn't get on board. And now we've been struggling with having a musician. He's ill, he's sick all the time. And last 3 weeks, I've attempted to quit the choir. I've attempted to quit the choir. I literally told somebody yesterday, what today is today? Tuesday or Monday, I don't know my days of weekend. It's Tuesday. It's Sunday. I told one of the members, I was like, look, I'm done. I sing because I worship God, not because I feel that it's a skill or that I sing to worship God. And I'm happy to be able to sing because more than a year ago, I couldn't sing. I had a surgery and I couldn't physically sing, and so I've been able to sing, and I joined the choir in the last year. And now it's like I don't even want to be a part. They're not committed. They don't show up. They don't want to rehearse other than Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock and those things. And we don't have leadership. We have no leadership. And my husband, who's the pastor, has to step up and guide. He's not a musician. And he now has to try to get them to, he has to provide the tracks for them and then try to get us to rehearse, in the last minute and prepare a song, and that's not excellence for me. And I wanted to quit, and until today, it's like you're saying, okay, look, you can't quit, and I know you're not saying that, but that's what I'm hearing. The Spirit's about excellence, about praising God, it's about worship, and that's what I do. But our congregation doesn't worship, no matter what we do, no matter what songs we sing, and it's just, sorry, I'm busy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that, kind of like I said, the reality is that, our world is so broken, people are walking in, and that happens, just so you know, just so you feel better, that happens in a majority of the churches on Sunday morning, where you've prepared a beautiful worship, experience, and people are just looking at you like crickets, and your whole self-esteem could just be ruined if you just look at those people. Like, seriously, you're just like, what in the world is going on? You know what I mean? But that's the reality. That's our world. People are coming in, and there's a hard heart But music does have the power to break those barriers. I strongly believe it. I strongly believe that music has the power. And so I would just say, it sounds like there's just, there's a void in leadership. Someone needs to own it. Someone needs to say, all right, how do we, gather that team? And again, like I told him, why we do what we do. Why is it that we do worship? Why, just to sing so you can hear us? No. We're here because, first of all, we want to give God all of the praise and all of the worship for who He is. Songs that declare His greatness. You're good, God. We're here to declare His greatness. Then we're here to point people to Jesus, to connect people to Jesus so they can experience a moment in the presence of God. That's it. And so people can have a relationship with God. And then we disciple them and we walk them through the journey of life. So I would say, man, vision. Guys, somebody needs to, who knows, it might be you. I'm not saying it's you. Somebody needs to say, hey, this is why God has called us here. This is why our church is here. And this is why worship is so important. And this is why we're gonna pursue this with excellence. This is why we're gonna try our best. And let me tell you, once you start to set that level of excellence, it's gonna do two things. It's gonna weed out all the people that don't have that heart, and that's okay. That's okay. And it's gonna also attract people who have that heart and vision. And so hopefully that answers. We can talk more about it if you want.
Cut off something super fast.
Yeah.
Sometimes a sabbatical. Hey, we've had some turnover. We're trying to find our group. We haven't been able to find our group. We're off group. What if we just lay this down for 3 months? What if we just take a breather? Can give you the space to see how important is that? Because I hear you saying, I'm frustrated because no one sees this as important. If you say, let's just pause, you might find out right quick just how important it is. Because if everyone goes, no, because that means you're going to shut that down at the end of 3 months. If all of a sudden there's the energy, you don't then have to drive it. You can have people buying in. And if everyone says, it's kind of nice to take a break. Sometimes we continue to try to resuscitate stuff when the Lord's trying to bring the resurrection. So that's just a...
Yeah,
that was good.
That was amazing. Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing.
And I was going to just give my little 2 cents. The church that I pastor now, my predecessor was there for 31 years. So now they have this young person full of energy. And, aside from the fact that I'm a female, and they didn't understand at first why I saw the things the way that I saw them, because it was fresh eyes. And what I've had to do in just about every part of this ministry was treat them as if they're all babes in Christ and not take it for granted that they've been in membership in this church for 40 years. And as I've been teaching them as if they don't know any better, I found that they knew church, but not relationship with Jesus. And when we started to talk about relationship with Jesus, they started to come up a little bit higher. Now, I still have the issue I have with the worship ministry and that portion of it, but the ushers are in place and on time. The trustees have never stepped up for my predecessor the way that, like, my predecessor had to open the church, close the church, arrange all the stuff for the church. I don't do that. The trustees are actually doing what they're supposed to do. The stewards are doing what they're supposed to do. So as I've been doing the training, I can see where they were and where God is bringing them up to. Notice I said God. All I did was institute the training. So right now, as we've been going through this, I'm thinking it's about time that I get with the whole worship committee. Everybody involved in worship, choir, organist, drummer, ushers, stewards, that take everybody involved in worship. We're going to take a sabbatical and deal with the training and what it means to create the atmosphere of God. That's what God just poured in my spirit. Because if we're going to get to excellence, it's not about having the ensemble. Because all I have is an organist and a drummer and a choir and a drumist. and a drummer and a choir. But it's literally about giving God our best. Being time, starting on time, making sure that the songs we sing are not just because we didn't practice, but they're because God has ushered it in and He's setting the atmosphere. So I would say don't quit, just, but there are ways that we can get people to realize that sometimes church membership, 30, 40, 50 years, is sometimes the place where you get comfortable and complacent and you miss Christ.
Yeah. It's true. That's good. And I would add to that too, that if you, that's amazing. If you're intentional, like I said about, like I started off, for me, the game changer was when I was a little boy at church. The opportunity, the fact that they poured into me. And let me tell you, I'm still learning, I'm still growing. But all that to say, there's something powerful in that as you start to look at things with fresh eyes and, invite the younger generation into the experience as well. People, and I was just talking to Zach about this, those people, they would have to have a really hard heart to not value, students and kids worshiping God and seeing the growth, and so I think that is important that you're just intentional with that. Like, I think we battle that tension of the older generation and what they've built, but the reality is that if we're going to reach this new generation, we have to be intentional on designing an experience for the 16-year-old and for 60-year-old. So I think that's it, guys. Thank you guys for your time.